it was very obvious that there was absolutely no way that any of this machinery was ever going to work again. Not from where we were in the control room.
And are you hearing the captain? Are you getting any instructions?
No,
Everything's gone now.
We've lost all broadcasts. The machinery control console is got lots and lots of lights on it. It was looking like a Christmas tree because every single one of them was either flashing red, orange, or green. I mean, its positioning, it was quite obvious that it was never going to. We couldn't control anything from there, so we left. We evacuated. We went aft to the after damage control base, and from there we went on. You know, it became so obvious that the ship was in a dire state. We needed to get away from the people who were in the after damage control base because they needed to do their job. So we went up into the hangar, at which point the ship was starting to list. One of my guys, who was the engineer officer of the watch, we found the propellers were still turning. How, why? Because all the controls had been broken. But the actual final fuel stop is on a Bowden cable. Luckily enough, that hadn't broken, so he went back down to the control room and tripped both engines. So we actually stopped the propellers from turning before the ship went over, so that at least we weren't going to be have propellers thrashing around in the water. But it was quite obvious that we were in a very, very serious situation. I met the MEO, and he said, "Well, what are we going to do?" And we were talking about it. I said, "Well, let's see if it stabilises. If it stabilises, then we can perhaps go back down and find out if there is anything that we can do. If not, at which point the fleet air arm decided that they were going to try and fly the helicopter off before it got beyond its limitations on the deck. By the time they'd run the helicopter up, the deck was out of bounds because the list of the ship was out. So they shut the helicopter down, and the helicopter was still lashed down on the deck when the ship went down.
So have all the crew now come? Is everyone on what's left of the deck? And how soon do people start getting into life rafts?
We were, I suppose it was about 25 minutes after the initial bang that it became blatantly obvious that the only way for all of us was to be, nobody actually gave an order to abandon ship.
Oh, okay.
It was
just clear.
It was clear that, you know, when the flight deck started to lap in the water, and you needed to step over the guardrails on the starboard side, otherwise you were going to slide across the upper deck of the ship and into the sea on the port side, that, you know, if the ship had stabilised at that point, then we could have perhaps come back on board and done something about it. But for safety at that time, get into life raft, and then if it's stable, come back. So that, you know, it was a unanimous, universal decision. Nobody actually, I don't think any single person made the decision to launch life rafts.
So once you had got on the life raft, where did you go to?
I would say I was picked up by a helicopter from the life raft I was in and taken to the Broadsword, which is quite surreal because Broadsword's still at action stations because the Argentinians are still flying. So
they're still flying around? Well, not directly
above. Not directly above, but they're still flying.
Okay.
Because shortly later, sometime after the Coventry was hit, Atlantic Conveyor got hit, and so I've been for a swim in the South Atlantic, lifted out by a helicopter, ends up in the on HMS Broadsword, goes for a nice hot shower, gets issued with a survivor's piece of clothing, and sit in the passageway whilst they are still fighting a war. They're still at action stations, and you think, and you're absolutely futile. You are now.
And also, you're dealing with the shock of your ship.
Yes.
Which you've seen sinking.
And people, because you don't know. There were helicopters were all over the place. People were getting taken here, there. You knew some people who were hurt. You knew some people had been injured, but you didn't know specifics. And yes, there was a lot of us on Broadsword, but when you actually started to count them up and make a list of them, it's not as many as what there should be. And then you got people, oh, such and such got taken to such and such, you know. And this is all hearsay. It's not clarified. There's no confirmation that this is the truth. We knew from the engine room side that we'd had severe injuries in the forward engine room, and the chances for anybody who've come out the forward engine room was probably 0. The after engine room, the bulkhead had been blown through between the forward and after engine room when the bomb went off. We knew that there'd been a fireball had gone through the after engine room. We knew that certain people had escaped. We knew that other people hadn't. But we didn't know whether they'd been killed, died, or whether they subsequently escaped later. It turned out at the end of it that everybody in the after engine room did get out, although some of them were severely injured, or pretty severely injured. It took me a long, long time to realise that I had, I suppose, post-traumatic stress. And I'd left the Navy and I was working and I was driving, and I would be driving along the road and a face of one of the guys who died in the Falklands would flash in front of me. And I thought, very, very, I found I was, in that period of time when I was driving on my own, I would be recollecting what happened. I went for some counselling, and it allowed me or made me capable of actually putting these events in the right filing cabinet. There were a long period of time when you actually still thought that you had failed because you didn't bring your ship home, because you actually hadn't done the job that you were paid and taught and had learnt to do. But you had actually personally failed. And it took a long, long time to get over, I won't say get over that, but to come to terms with that in actual fact you've been really very successful.